Hey, everybody, this is John Kovach Jr. with Amplified Minds, founder of the Champion Circle, president of Amplified Minds. And as promised, here is an incredible interview, opportunity, discussion, and just a fun hangout with some of my really close friends. I've got Stephen and Mark Steiner on the line here with Latent Wealth. I'm super excited to have them here. And just as brief introduction, and then I want to kind of tee you guys off, pun intended with the golf jokes, since these are my favorite golf buddies. But I want to tee you guys off to kind of talk a little bit about yourselves, your background, and just how we got to know each other and so forth. But as some of my friends and I've developed over the year, some of my closest friends, these guys, it all started with a conversation over golf with me and Stephen. And Stephen, I'm gonna point to Stephen. He's the closest one to my finger there. There we go. Stephen and I were at a golf just outing with one of my cousins and got to talking a lot about what are the stuff that they were doing. And I was interested and fascinated by just all of these things, so much that it got us to thinking about how we could work together. This is literally the union and marriage of a story of the relationship created just by hanging out a little bit, understanding one another's skills, and then creating opportunities through those skills. And I'm very, very grateful for the Steiners and what they've created and what they've built, but also for the awesome product and services that they've given to our audience, and just how they've helped so many people in our audience and in our circle. So I'm grateful for them. I got to know Stephen a little bit through that on a personal level as well as on a professional level. And then he introduced me to his father, Mark, who introduced me to everything. And I'm going to point, he's the guy not next to my finger, but there we go, reaching through him. There we go to, yeah. And then we all have mustaches. As I got to know Mark, we obviously got to know each other through golf and a few outings over dinner and lunch and stuff, but got to know him and got to tap into his brain and where he's come from and his decades of experience in the financial industry and the financial realm, the billions of dollars that he's seen and transacted through some of his efforts in the communities and businesses he's worked with, and just the credibility that comes from the background that he's had the ability to work with just blew me away. And not to just blow me away, but to really just focus on this guy has a brain that has solutions for Americans and American families. And that was one of the reasons why we quickly wanted to have an incredible resource for a lot of the people who we come across and a lot of the people who attend our events and so forth. But I was super excited to get to know you guys and to build this relationship where we could offer opportunities and solutions to some incredible people. So I'm going to cut it off there. There's my introduction to kind of tee you guys off. But I'm super excited to introduce both Stephen and Mark Steiner. And why don't we start with Stephen and we'll work over to Mark, but just say hello, introduce yourself a little bit, and just tell us a little bit about yourself, not necessarily about Latent Wealth and what you do, but tell us a little bit about your interests and just if this was a first date, tell me about who you are and what you're most interested in. And that's what most of our listeners are interested before we get into the cool stuff.
All right, good deal. Well, like you said, first of all, feelings are mutual. We appreciate everything you're doing, John. You have a fantastic platform and you have a great group of people that follow you. And we're really grateful for the relationship that we have with you guys, because it's been monumental for us, not just on a business standpoint, but also just personally. It's been fantastic. So a little background on me, Stephen Steiner, 26 years old. Studied finance and international economics in school, so I have a background in that. My introduction to you actually was through your cousin Chandler. So before I got into this, I was one of those pesky door-to-door salesman guys.
All right.
That's what I did with your cousin Chandler, and he was a stud too. And I know you've probably had him on this show also. He's doing some cool things, but 26, recently married, got a kid on the way. So big introduction or big news there. We just found out a couple weeks ago. So life's starting to get real, and I'm hoping I'm prepared for that. You mentioned a couple times I love golf, and I love what you're doing. I think if I wasn't doing this, I'd be trying to do something like you are, just networking with people, creating relationships, more focused on probably the individual than anything else. And I think that's why this is such a great little partnership we've got going on here. So that's me. I'll give you some time.
Yeah, pointing over to the older Mark Steiner.
There we go. Thank you, John. Appreciate the introduction, and you're so kind and generous in your comments. Everything's downhill from there, I guess. But we share a common ground, a common interest in golf and extracurricular activities. I think most of us work so that we can find time to play and be successful enough that we can find time to play and do things that are family oriented, personal interest development, things like that. And I share that same thing. I've been doing it for more years than both of you guys probably combined. But I've got some season on me now, and I've learned a few things. And if I was going to say hobbies, I'd say family, then golf, and then I do like our work agenda. I do like what we're doing for families and individuals and small businesses and the contributions we make to them so that they can achieve their dreams. So that's kind of where we spend our time. It's doing what we like to do.
I love it. That's a great introduction, and I love conversations with you guys because we really get to just geek out and nerd out about some really cool stuff. I'm going to finish this comment here. Americans win. Awesome. And this is a really cool device because I'm able to create comments that allow us to talk. And this is the discussion we're going to be talking about today. Before we even get into that, I want to reciprocate to some of your gratitude. I've absolutely loved our association and our friendship amongst our partnership and creation. But I've just seen the things that what Mark has created and what Stephen's been able to do and how it's helped and saved a lot of lives and a lot of families in the realm of the people who we coach and who we teach and who we meet with in our champion circle, in our mastermind groups, in our private events, all the stuff that we've been doing. This has been an incredible merger marriage between us, allowing us to share what you guys have and just to have our people identify some of the opportunities available to them that don't seem to run in the circles of normality and what people typically do as American families saving money for retirement at one point in their life. But that's not really what the discussion's about today. The discussion is honestly helping Americans win. And I love this. And I love this platform because I can let you guys know who's jumping in on our conversations. A good friend of mine and a partner in the merchant processing space, Jason Curtis, is listening in today. He says he loves golf. It's amazing when it can happen to spend a few hours with other people. A good friend of mine, Casey Yardley, his networking is best done in a relaxed place. Golf is relaxing and fun. I absolutely love that. So we got some people on the line watching and listening. So let's kind of just jump into some of these conversations. And I kind of want to tee Mark off for this, but we had talked about over the phone prior to this meeting that we wanted to address something. And it's about helping American families or just Americans win. And the way to win in the financial industry isn't what we're being told or isn't what we're being let's just be cattle guarded over towards. We're not being pushed in the right direction, but it's under someone else's agenda. And that agenda happens to be the financial industry's agenda. They want us to go a certain way to do a certain thing because it benefits them most. But there are alternative opportunities or alternative solutions and things that people can do because of their habits and their behaviors to align themselves with incredible opportunities to grow and win in their financial agenda. So the discussion today is the American financial agenda versus the financial industry's agenda. And I want to tee you off, Mark, because you kind of had a better detail and a better explanation about this, and why you wanted to talk about it most is because you've got some ideas as to why that people are and are not winning. So there you go. I'll throw you the ball there. Let's hit this thing home.
Okay, well, so let me put this in context. I represent a company called Latent Wealth. Latent Wealth is a consumer advocate marketing company. So think about that for a moment. The name of the company, Latent Wealth. So we work with financial professionals in all walks of the financial industry. We work with professionals in there. But the goal is to help them better address their clients and their clients' objective and needs. And so one of the things we started looking at years and years ago, we've been doing this, like John mentioned, 20 plus years ago. And we started looking at what consumers are trying to accomplish. One of the things that I find fascinating is we want to be good at everything we do, right? We go to school, we get an education, we become professional, and we become the best in the field of our study. And then we rely on other professionals in the field of their study to help us accomplish and get what we need to do, right? So if I wanted to be an engineer, I go to school, I become an engineer. But if I need to buy a home, I'm going to go to a mortgage professional to help me do that, or a real estate professional help me do that. If I'm ill or sick, I'm going to go to a medical professional help me to do that. And so by leaning on each other's professionalism, we can get the best results that we're trying to achieve. Interestingly, one of the things that Latent Wealth has observed over time, and this is not going to be a crazy observation, you probably noticed it as well, but we all enter this professional market and we work for our entire career. We kind of make up some sayings sometimes. We get a job so that we can make enough money so that we can quit the job.
Right? Exactly.
So during the time while we are saving and accumulating wealth, we want to do something we enjoy and we want to be good at it, and that's our profession. But the end game for most people is either to retire or to at least not be burdened or owned by the job. And so we're kind of all on that path, whatever profession we've chosen. Interestingly, our profession teaches us to earn the living that we're looking for, right? The income that we make. So one of our other little phrases we say is we learn to earn, but we don't necessarily learn to keep. The profession helps us be good at what we do to trade our knowledge for income, and then that's our income, and that's what we try to save and grow and ultimately retire on. But there isn't a structured environment necessarily for us to learn how to keep what we've earned. And we rely on the financial services industry, that's their profession, and we rely on them to teach us principles that will create wealth for us. And they do that. But if you were to look around, and let's say I want to retire at the end of my career, the standard age, 60, 65 years old, something like that. If we were to make an observation about maybe go into these big box stores, retail outlets, we would find an inordinate number of senior citizens working in those stores. At the end of a professional career, they're maybe bagging our groceries, they're checking us out, they're doing some work that probably isn't in line with their profession, for the previous 30 odd years. So the question that Latent Wealth ask themselves is, why, if the professional industry, the financial industry professionals are teaching us these principles and we're taking their advice, why are we ending up working in a part-time environment in our retirement years? It's a good question, and you almost have to draw the conclusion that people aren't very smart, which is a poor conclusion. You have to recognize that maybe information that they relied on wasn't as sound as they hoped it would be. So keep that in mind. Latent Wealth, being a consumer advocate, looking for better ways to create financial solutions for people, because the industry as a standard has failed them to some degree. And I'm not picking on the industry. The industry's got great products. They got great people. They got great professionals. Stephen's one of them. John knows several of them, and that's where Latent Wealth focuses on, working with good people, trying to do good things for good people. And so, but we have to kind of pull the sheets back on a couple things to determine maybe why things haven't worked as well as we hope that they would be. So that's where Latent Wealth spends a little bit of time breaking down and maybe doing some micro analysis on some habits and things like that. One of the things that I have to look at, and all of us, so here's what I say. I think I'm pretty good at what I do. I think Stephen's great at what he does. John, you're clearly good at what you do. So I think most of us are good at what we do, but we are all collectively probably better at consuming. We're all great consumers. We're good at certain things, but we're all great at consuming. And so we consume what's put in front of us, and then we try to save and do whatever we think is best for our families. So we have to take a look and say, who is it, what organizations or industries or groups have created the rules that allow us to function in the financial service industry? And it's really two groups. It's the government The government sets the regulation, all that, and then the industry themselves, they're the creator of the products, right? Whether it's a bank product or an insurance product or a Wall Street product, they're the creators of those products, and they push them to us. I'll give you a quick example of a good idea gone bad, or maybe always a bad idea, but Social Security.
Right. Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. Was that a joke?
Well, so here's the deal. Interestingly, Social Security was put forward. How many consumers do you think on the board of Social Security that got a vote as to whether that was a good plan or not? Probably none. Government sat around and said, hey, we've got a plan. Let's take the equivalent of about 12 or so % of your income, and let's put that in an organization or call it an account called Social Security. And if you pitch in 12+% of your money, then when it comes to retire, you'll have plenty of money to retire on. I think any financial advisor said if you could put more than 10 or 12% of your money into a long-term strategy, you'd have plenty of money to retire on. I don't think anybody thinks Social Security is the financial solution to retirement. Yet, as bad as it universally is understood to be, we haven't terminated that program. We still contribute that amount of money. Doesn't solve the problem. So rather than terminating it, we are now shifted to, hey, why don't you guys try a 401k, or why don't you try a pension plan, or why don't you try something that, yeah, sure, you're contributing to Social Security, but we need to now contribute to other programs. And those same rules for 401ks, IRAs, pension, any retirement plan is really a combination between government and industry, financial industry. And then they put the rules forward and say, hey, if you do this, then you might survive it. Here's what's interesting to know. All of the money that goes into these programs comes from us, the consumers, right? Yet when we look to see who has created wealth from those, is it the consumers, or is it the banks, or is it the insurance companies, or is it Wall Street? Who has plenty of money? You don't see those guys working in the big box stores. It's the contributors to the money. So that's where latent wealth kind of got its baseline, is saying, hey, maybe there's something that could be better reviewed or managed differently. That clearly the standard plan that's been put to us has worked well for those that put forward the plan, but maybe not as well for those who participate in the plan. And so latent wealth took a kind of a reverse look as a consumer and said, let's look at agendas. And let's look at any agenda, right? You have an agenda, John. You want to create success. You want to do things. And so you have an agenda. In other words, you put a series of plans and executables in place so that at the end of whatever that is, you've got what you wanted. We also, as consumers, whether it's our professional or individual, we have an agenda. We want something we want to accomplish. And so when it comes to retirement or money management or fiscal responsibility, we have an agenda, and that is, hey, if I put this money here, will create the end goal for me? And what we're finding out is there may be a conflict in that agenda. Stephen has a good example of maybe a product versus, an industry who develops a product, and what their end goal is and what the consumer's end goal is. And maybe Stephen can share that.
Sure. So talking about, we're all great consumers, and there are a ton of products out there that I want, and a ton of things that I want to do, and kind of taking a step back and looking at different people's agendas. If you were to walk into an Apple store and you wanted to buy a phone, well, there's an agenda from both sides there. Apple has an agenda to sell you an iPhone here, and then I've got an agenda to buy that, right? And so the agenda that Apple has is they want my money. They want my $1,000. And I say, well, that phone is worth $1,000 to me. So that's good. So both of our agendas are fulfilled there, right? We both walk away happy. In the financial services arena, I don't think we really see the services that they offer as products, even though they're built up at the top. There's a profit margin built into there, and so that's their agenda, is how can we capture the consumer's money? And so they make it look really good to us. This is good for X reason. And so we sit down with the investment advisor, whoever it is, and we give them our money. And what we want is obviously that money to grow. We want more money. And what is that professional on that side, or what does the industry want? They want our money as well.
Right.
And so the product in this transaction is money. And so me being the consumer, I want that money to grow. I don't want half of that money. I want all of that money that grows, right? And then the industry, what do they want? They want the money as well. And so those are the things that that we never really get to peel back, and we don't get to see how much money is being generated there, who it's going to. We just know they tell us, yeah, I can get you X%, or I can deliver you this amount of returns. And we're happy with that because we don't know any better. But it is kind of a hidden deal where the one product is money, and it's what both sides are fighting for. And so really only one side's going to win. And, my dad kind of made the comment there, you're walking around and you see all the banks, they have their corner lots on Main Street. They've got the big, you walk in, marble columns, it's all beautiful. And then unfortunately, the people who are contributing to that, they don't live in houses like that. They end up working at Walmart or Home Depot in their retirement years. Even though they were working professionals their whole career, they were probably very good at what they did. But because there is kind of this unseen product and unseen deliverance of that product, it makes it hard. And when you're both fighting for the same thing, one person's going to win. And unfortunately, it looks like they've been able to win more often than we have. So,
yeah, I call it the herd mentality. When you take a cat, let's call it a herd of cattle. I almost said a herd of cattle. I almost mixed my words there. And as a result of the herd mentality, if you stay in the pack, you don't really get to eat the best grass. You kind of get the grass that's already been chomped on and munched on and also stomped on. I like those three words: chomped, munched, and stomped. But if you were to venture out from the herd and kind of find your own pastures, yeah, there's a little bit less security. Maybe there's a little bit less uncertainty venturing away from the herd, but you get to find some of the greener grass. You get to find some things that are more exciting. You might even venture and find more incredible things. And as you venture off, you now have the ability to take other people with you and say, hey, look what I found, like, check this out, and that just becomes the herd mentality versus we'll call it the stray mentality. But if we conform to what the financial industry wants us to do, you're going to be in those examples of both you and Stephen and Mark you suggested. We're going to find ourselves in a scenario trying to live off of I'm going to call it welfare, but we call it Social Security in this country. And we're also going to call, some of these plans that seem almost impossible to reach unless we're contributing thousands and thousands of our income monthly, weekly to get where we need to be over time. And yeah, those principles do work to an extent. There's a level of the law of a compounding interest, but still, we have to deal with markets that we can't control. But what we can control, and I wanted to bring up a comment, one of my good friends, Kyle Taylor, pitched in and he said, the key is to become your own bank. Be the bank in your business and your financial planning, creating wealth to leverage financial literacy. I love that comment because it's just like being aware of being aware of what you can do with your cash and then just creating strategies behind it. But it's not often what you think are the strategies because you're fed this agenda. You're fed this let's call it this dialogue of this is what it takes to create wealth. And that's what the financial industry or a lot of financial professionals want us to believe because it benefits them and it benefits us in the long term. My friend Casey chimed in and said, Apple's good. They create Y. That's why people pay thousands of dollars, but they know how to get their money, right? They know how to get us. Ryan, by the way, Ryan Fritchie popped in, our good friend Ryan. He says, hey, John, Mark, and Stephen. Hey, Ryan, glad to see you. And then Willie Blake, who just had a baby this morning. Wait to meet Stephen and Mark. He's hanging out and watching with us. But anywho, I wanted to just kind of direct the conversation in that direction and just say, you guys are absolutely right. These conversations have elicited the idea that, maybe it's time that we understand finances and money for ourselves. I know it's a complicated subject, but it doesn't have to be. There's great things that we can do in creating our own bank within ourselves, creating our own returns, and starting to focus on things that are actually going to help us win versus the other agendas. What do you think about that?
Well, I know you got some stuff to say. I think some of those comments, they hit the nail on the head there, just spot on. Apple's very smart in the product that they push out, starting with why, and talking about this whole herd mentality. If you turn on the TV and stuff, or the commercials you see are find out how you can get a loan for this, or find out how you can get a bigger house or a nicer car. And that is just in direct conflict with the retirement goal, right? If we're spending that extra money, maxing out the amount of our income that we can dedicate toward a mortgage or toward a car payment, on those two things alone, we're up at 50% of our income, right? And so the industry and the agenda is, let's figure out how we can get their money. And I think the banks are fantastic at this. They manage 70 to 80% of our money. Now, they don't call it management, right? They hold it there for us. But what do we get in return for that? We get some safety and some liquidity. I get that underneath my mattress. You know what I mean? You get a little bit more convenience in the sense that you get a debit card and online banking and things like that. But if a financial advisor were to sit down in front of you and say, hey, let me manage 70 to 80% of your money, I can go grow it to the moon and back. And you're like, great, what do I get out of that? Like, you get access to it, but none of the growth. If you knew that was the deal, you probably wouldn't sign up for that. Yet we all do that. And so Apple's really good at it. Kind of like Casey was saying there, I think the banks are even better at that. And they do a fantastic job in that everybody wants the bigger car. We want the bigger house. We want to go on the vacations. And so all the messaging that we receive is get more now. And unfortunately, if you don't understand the rules of money properly, that comes at a sacrifice of live well later, right? So,
right. Yeah, I love that example. Thanks for kind of delving deeper into that. I appreciate that. That actually made the light click for me a little bit more.
So a couple of things you said, John. You were talking about this herd mentality, and maybe venturing out of the herd seems like it may be risky. And it's interesting you say that, because we think that, right? If we stay with the herd, we're not at risk. But if the entire herd walked off the edge of the cliff, we're all at risk. We just didn't think so until it was too late. And so stepping outside of the herd does not necessarily represent more risk. It just represents a different perspective and maybe less risk, frankly. There's more opportunity to get grass outside the herd than there is in the herd, so it's a less risk environment. But what Latent Wealth has looked at, and Steve made a great point here, of the way banks look at things. And let me just kind of share something. There's subsets on the financial service industry, really. There's the banking segment of that, there's the insurance segment of that, and there's Wall Street segment of that. And all of them combined, for the most part, make up financial services. But if you look at what each of them, they all have their own purpose in the industry, but they all have something in common. They all want your money.
Yep.
Banks take it in the form of deposit. Insurance companies take it in the form of premiums, and Wall Street takes it in the form of investments. And their daily objective is just to get more, correct?
That's right.
Here's what's interesting about a bank. When a bank wants your money, but rather than give you share on the earnings, they give you something else. They give you safety and liquidity. I call it kind of a shiny object. Let's distract away from the money growth and give you something else. Insurance does the same thing. They want your money in premiums, but rather than give you a share on the return, they say, I'll cover you in the event of a catastrophic event. So if you got in a car wreck, I'll pay for the damage. If you got sick, as a health insurance company, we'll pay for your medical costs. Or if you die, we'll support your family in their financial needs, right? So they take the money and grow it, but they don't share the money. What they do is they share something other than the money.
Right. Wall
Street's the only one that shares the money. How much they share maybe is a question mark, but the fact is that that's where we see investment growth, right? So what Latent Wealth has really done, interesting couple of scenarios I want to share with you if you got a second. But
of course,
what Latent Wealth has done is really acknowledge that 100% of the money that you earn is generating income, earnings for somebody, right? If it's in the bank, it's earning for the bank. If it's in the insurance company, it's earning for the insurance company. If it's in Wall Street, it's earning for you and Wall Street. And so when you take your dollar, it can really, your earnings, call it monthly earnings, you can break it down into two categories pretty simply. You can say, I have my discretionary money, the money that I can have some flexibility. Do I want to go out to eat tonight? Do I want to go to the movies? Do I want to buy something? That's your discretionary. You have control over that. Then you have the non-discretionary money, and this is money that you've pre-allocated to an obligation like a mortgage payment. I make whatever I make, but X amount every month is going to the mortgage payment, X amount every month is going to the car payment, X amount is going to student loans, X amount is going to taxes. These dollars are non-discretionary. You don't have latitude on these dollars on a monthly basis anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that discretionary money makes up probably 60, 70% of all of our dollars. You think about what you have by the time you take out your mortgage, your rent, your cars, your taxes, all those kind of things, you're left with maybe 20, 25% of discretionary dollars left. And a subset of that is what we push into 401ks. It's what we try to buy real estate with. So we take a subset of our money and live on it. And then we take a subset of that and try to push to the future, frankly, in hopes that that leftover money will grow sufficiently to cover 100% of our obligations. And it just doesn't happen. And so what Latent Wealth said, hey, wait a minute, stop for a second. If 60 or 70% of your money is growing in insurance or banks or whatever, why aren't we sharing in that growth? Mm-hmm. So the answer is we can. We just have to shift the agenda a little bit. We need to approach our agenda using financial products instead of succumbing to the insurance or financial service or bank's agenda, taking advantage of their products. So let's talk about a bank for a minute. A bank, we put our money in the bank really for two reasons, as Stephen mentioned. Liquidity, because we need it for our bills, and we want it to be safe. We don't want to lose it. We don't want somebody to steal it. We want to make sure it's there. So safety and liquidity is so important to us that we would put the large chunk of our money there and demand no return on it. Liquidity and safety is that important. But we only really need that for one day a month, right? The day we pay the bills. You with me on that?
Absolutely.
That I'm paying my bills on day X. I can pay my car payment on the same day I pay my utility bill, on the same day I pay my mortgage, on the same day I pay my anything, right? The other 29 days, the money's just sitting there. Who's benefiting it for 29 days? Well, the banks, right? So we started looking at the banks and what value they are to us. And really the value they are to us is bill pay. So we only really need them, if we're disciplined at all, we only need them for one day out of the month. Then we could take our dollars and put somewhere else and might get growth on them. What is insurance good for us? Well, if it's life insurance, they're only good for us one day out of our life, right? And the rest of the time, they grow the money. So why don't we share in that growth? And of course, Wall Street is we understand that. So what Latent Wealth has really done is said, let's take a look at each of these industries. Let's see what value the bank provides us, not what we provide them. And let's use them to our advantage on that. So let's use them for bill pay. Well, if insurance is only good for the day we die, but they're accumulating growth for every other day that we're alive, well, that fits our agenda, doesn't it? We're alive until we're not. So if we can get some growth or utilize their strengths, then we'll do it. And then when we go to Wall Street, what are they good for? Sure, they're going to make money. There's risk, there's reward. And so what Latent Wealth has really done is said, we're attacking the three financial legs of the industry and saying, we're going to use Wall Street for what it's good for. And here's what I mean by that. We have relationships with venture capital companies, with registered investment advisors, with professionals in that area that can help us get better than average returns on lower than average risk. So when it comes to Wall Street, we've got relationships that can help. When we look at insurance companies, we look at those companies for values that they can provide to us, not us to them. And then we look at banks, what can they provide us, not us to them. And when we look at each of those things, effectively, we can put, in a perfect world, about 100% of our dollars to work for us, rather than the 5 to 10% that we traditionally do. So if I've got 50, 60, 40, 70% of my money working for me at a modest but secure and guaranteed structure, that return is substantially more than what 5 or 10% might get me in some risk element. It adds up. It sounds weird, but it adds up to a minimum of hundreds of thousands of dollars to oftentimes millions of dollars in a difference in our environment. So let me kind of give you this thought. We can answer another couple of questions, but there's a lot of people that understand Dave Ramsey. He's a very conservative guy, and he basically, his message is sacrifice now, right? Get out of debt, save all your money, be very frugal. Sacrifice now, enjoy later. What the industry tells us is enjoy now, sacrifice later, right? I'll enjoy now and I'll work at Walmart. Or if I'm Dave Ramsey, I'll eat beans and rice now and I'll enjoy later, right? Those are the two schools of thought. What latent wealth, its school of thought is, we've recognized that all of our money can benefit us. So if we do it right, we don't have to sacrifice now, nor do we have to sacrifice later, but we can maintain the same standard of living. So we love that message, and we know that's the agenda that Mr. and Mrs. America out there are trying to do anyway. So if we can help them accomplish their goals that they've already set out to do in the disciplines that they've already established. Let me just say what I mean by that. Can you imagine a financial planner coming to you and say, hey, John, what do you want to retire on? You say, I'd like to have $1 million. And he says, I can do that. All you need to do is save X amount per month for so many years. And you say, I love that idea. I just don't have X. I've spent it all on my mortgage and my car and my vacations and my everything else. And so
Exactly.
here's a financial advisor that comes up with a plan that you need, but your disciplines don't allow for it, right? You already are set in your spending habits and your earning potential. And so you and everybody else out there, oftentimes, here's a good plan, but through a disciplinary issue, you're not able to take advantage of it. And so you both walk away, neither one being served, not the financial advisor and not you or your family. But if we could come and say, how about this? The latent wealth strategy, without changing your spending habits, without changing your earning, so you don't need to get a second or third job, just living within the standards that you already do, capitalizing on the earnings that the insurance companies and the banks make and some of the money that Wall Street makes that they haven't shared with you previously. Latent wealth has a handle on that and can help you now capitalize on all of your dollars instead of just the 5 or 10% that have some degree of limitation or risk to them. And it just works. It's got guarantees. People like it. It better serves them. You're capitalizing on your agenda, using the industry for what they can offer, as opposed to industry capitalizing on their agenda for what you can offer. And it seems simple enough, but it is huge in the results for our consumers and clients. We love it.
I absolutely love that. And if you're as dumb as a rock like I am, or like to actually eat beans and rice as Dave Ramsey suggests in the sacrifice mentality first, it's funny. And I just pulled out from my desk library here. I just had a couple Dave books, but having studied him and having studied a bunch of the stuff, I realized early on, and actually what resonated most with me in my first golf interaction with Stephen was exactly what Kyle said in his comment here. It's going to be big, so half our faces are going to be taken up. But he says financial literacy takes the risk away. When you actually know what you're looking to do with your money, you do it. And that's some of the things that we talked about here. And I thought, wow, that takes away everything that this guy says. And for me, it's a better agenda. It's a better idea. It's a better platform of just knowing where to put and what to do with my money when I need it and where it needs to be to get the most return or get the most growth. And that to me was just hands down the most exciting part about it. And a lot of the people in our audiences, a lot of people who've been to our events have delved into this and have tried it and are having a lot of successes. I know that you guys have had quite a few success stories using, and also being, sales side, of course, but being on the consumer end of all this, you've seen a lot of opportunities come your way. And I kind of wanted to delve into that a little bit for a minute, maybe ask Stephen a little bit, since Stephen and I share very, very similar lifestyles. We like to play, we like our cars, but we also like fun, and we like family, and we like food, and we like great things. But I just wanted to kind of tap into Stephen for a minute here and just talk a little bit about how this has changed you and your lifestyle versus what you used to do without a particular financial literacy knowledge, without this type of strategy.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one of the best things about it is that it really hasn't changed my lifestyle a whole lot. I'm like every other consumer. I've already picked my disciplines, and I guess it turns out I'm not that disciplined, right? I like to eat the good food and, drive the fun cars and go on the fun vacations. I think everybody else does too. And so
Absolutely,
Dave Ramsey would probably shake his head at me or, give me a little beat down. But No, the one thing that it has done is it's provided a lot of just comfort in knowing that, yeah, I don't have to sacrifice now in order to live well later. I can live comfortably now and live comfortably later. And if somebody, before kind of understanding all the nuances of the financial industry and how money works and everything like that, yeah, kind of what my dad was saying, somebody come to you and say, you have to allocate X amount of money out in order to grow the money to be what it needs to be in order to live well later. And that means, sell the BMW and get the Honda, or get rid of the big house and live in an apartment, or whatever it may be. But if we understand the principles of how money works and how each industry has their own benefits to us too, because we benefit them, they can benefit us as well. They have a lot of fantastic products that work in our favor if we understand them. But we don't have to change our disciplines. We've already signed up for a lifestyle. We have a mortgage, we have car payments, all these things that we're dedicated to. And for a lot of them, they're long periods of time, a 30-year mortgage, a 5 or 6 year car payment, all those different things. Let's use those to our advantage. There are things that we can do with those that can be to our benefit as well. So I think for me, it's been great. I just go throughout life doing what I'm doing the same way that anybody else would. But I know that through having this proper understanding, I don't have to have the stresses of, oh man, I'm not putting enough away, or should I get this or not? That my disciplines can work to my advantage, and it's created a much more peaceful lifestyle, I guess, but also allows you to still have some fun. And then being on the kind of call it the educational side or the sales side of it, I love the stories that we see. People who you just don't know. They think, yeah. You always hear you have to get these big returns on a small amount of money, right? Because we're used to only playing with 5 to 10% of our money in order to set that aside for retirement. That's a real problem, especially if you look at the market in the past month or so. Anybody who had their money sitting in a 401k, that's a rough time to look at it. You don't want to be looking at your 401k right now. But if the problem is expecting a large return on a small amount of money, then let's figure out how to get all of our money to work. And we don't have to get big returns at that point. We don't have to expect huge returns or promise big returns. So if the problem is expecting big returns on a small amount of money, let's figure out how to get modest guaranteed returns on all of our money. And it works great for consumers. It works great for small business owners. It works great for anybody who already has their set disciplines. We can now kind of spin the tables and use those things to your advantage. And we have a couple of cool stories. One of them that I'm thinking of here, he's a small business owner, has a couple of, call it 15 employees or so, and he provides health benefits for them, right? And so the health insurance that he pays, that's not something he wants to pay. That provides no benefit to him. It benefits his employees, but that's just an extra bill that doesn't provide new revenues for him. So you look at that on the balance sheet, and that is a liability, right? And nobody really likes those. Through this structure, we were able to use that to his advantage, and just through rerouting, he's still paying his health insurance, his health premiums the same way that he's always been doing. And he has about 11 years left of doing that in his working plan. He plans to retire here in about 11 years. But just by using the new industry knowledge that we have and helping him understand that those health premiums are now not a liability anymore, they're an asset to him, to the tune of over the course of 11 years, he's going to have $5.5 million sitting in an account for him, with a retirement income on top of that of about $80,000 a year. That's all accessible to him tax-free. He can use it whenever he wants to. There's no penalties for getting into it early. And so just through understanding kind of the way things works, and I felt this in my life, but taking the ability to take a liability where you see that as a budgetary item that just kind of makes you cringe when you see it, and turning it into an asset that becomes very beneficial for you, not just now, but also in the future, man, that is something fun for everybody.
I love that. I love that perspective too. I had to poke at you because I know that you and I share very, very similar qualities, but I love those examples, and I love that testimonial of just what it takes, what it's like to have control over your money and to have an idea of where you can be. And then the story of somebody who's having success. I think I know this person, and it's really exciting to watch and see them, really, really have a lot of success with this and what they're doing, but they're not the only one. There's a lot of people who are trying this out and using this and you know what, one of the things that we really like to talk about on this show and what we talk about at Amplified Minds and a lot of our events is pure ownership in the form of personal accountability, of just knowing what's going on in your world and not just allowing other people to take care of it for you, because that goes into the examples that Mark was talking about. If you let the financial industry just determine that, then we're going to be stuck at 70 years old working a part-time job at Walmart trying to figure out how we're going to pay bills because Social Security didn't cover it, and then all the other strategies. And I think there's quite a bit of interest in the comment section here that we can address in another time, but a lot of people are curious about the different percentages and diversifying and stuff like that. But really what we're talking about here is what Mark said, and that's the use of our money and why we use the banks when all it is bill pay. When all we do is use it for bill pay, and knowing what to do with it during the other 27, 28, 29 days of the month, and how to grow it and how to get great stuff with that. So I absolutely love this. I continue to just want to dig deeper, but I do want to invite everybody, and we have a few more minutes, and I want to be respectful of the Steiners' time. We have a few minutes to kind of just chat and wrap up. Any other last comments? But as you're kind of wrapping these up, I posted a link in the comment section, you guys. It's a Zoom link. If you want to have just like a one-on-one conversation, Q&A style, fireside chat, we are going to be having one tomorrow night at 5:30 with the Steiners. And during this chat, we're going to have the opportunity to get deeper into these topics, to talk about the strategies that they're using, that they've seen, Wall Street, type stuff with Mark and Stephen tomorrow. And because of that, I want to invite you guys to do that. Well, I posted that link, and the link only works if you register. So you got to click the link, you register for it, and then you can attend. And there you'll have an opportunity to talk with us one-on-one and to get into some of these conversations. But I really wanted to open up. That's just a subtle invitation. You guys join us tomorrow, and invite your friends, invite your families if they have questions too. If you know somebody who's like boiling up because this is the kind of stuff they want to talk about, this is a great person to share that with. But anyway, that's in the comment section. But pointing back over to these guys, I wanted to just ask you guys any last comments or concerns or thoughts you wanted to share with some of these people and the listeners, just about some of your thoughts and ideas regarding these strategies, any just last minute conversation topics we could bring up.
So yeah, if it's okay, let me give a summary statement here. First of all,
and take your time, Mark. There's no rush.
Well, here's what I want to do. We've mentioned Dave Ramsey, we've mentioned Walmart, we've mentioned so many things, and everybody has a good angle for things. It's hard to argue that Dave Ramsey saying be conservative is a bad thing, and so I certainly don't want to say that.
Right.
And he has a lot of good messaging. Interestingly, Dave has an agenda as well. We all have agendas. We have to recognize that. He's an entertainer. He's a radio personality. He sells advertising, time on the radio, and the more people listen to him, the more he makes, and the more he earns. And so his messaging is safety, and very conservative. But as interesting as that message is, not everybody's an adopter of it, and that was a point we're wanting to make. Not everybody can change their life in the face of all that's there and be disciplined like that. Wall Street, insurance, banks, those are good people as well. They provide valuable products. They help people achieve certain levels of wealth creation. So we don't want to really beat on them either.
Right.
But what we're really saying is, in the balance of things, where are we as consumers in that balance? Are we getting the value that we could? And I think we could ask anybody and say, if you could get more for what you're doing, would you take it? And the answer is, I would, depending on the risk, I would. So if we could eliminate the risk, then the answer is yes. I would look at that because the risk is now gone. So we think we provide that. The other thing that's interesting in a consumer, say, if I said, hey, John, I've got something for you, you would measure that against what you already have, right? It's not as though you're not measuring against anything. Everything we do is comparable. Hey, that guy's tall. Why is he tall? Well, because I'm this high and he's higher than me, right? So therefore he's tall. Everything is by association, relative comparison. And so if I said, here's an investment strategy, you would say, I'll consider it against my current investment strategy. If I said, here's a saving strategy, I will compare it against my saving strategy. So we have this baseline understanding that what we're doing is good. And then anything else, we'll make a comparison. And if it's better, we'll consider it. Sometimes we don't think to consider that what we're doing right now is not necessarily good. It's just status quo. And so status quo will get us working part-time in our retirement years. Status quo will keep us from traveling the world maybe the way we want to. Status quo might create a financial burden when things change in our life that we can't adapt to. So status quo may not always be the best, but here's what Latent Wealth says. First of all, our motto is change nothing, multiply everything. So without having to change anything, if you can get something for it, maybe that's worth considering. The second thing we do is we take what you're doing and we compare it to what you're getting, right? And so most of your money sitting in the bank, the rate of return at your bank is very, very, very close to zero. So if Latent Wealth can present a plan that creates more than zero, then it might be worth considering. The status quo is very close to zero. So we don't have to have any crazy investment strategies and we've mentioned investment now, I don't know how many times. We don't even talk investment. We are not investment advisor. We don't play in that game. So the risk element associated with investment is not part of our structure. So what we really want to do is invite people to say, where am I personally? As 60, 70, 80% of my money that floats through the bank, is that a zero? Can I get better than zero without changing anything? That might be worth looking at. And so that's really what we look to do, and we customize, we meet individually, and we figure out what people's goals are, and then we figure out how to improve upon that. And here's all we say. If it's better, let's pursue it. If it's not, let's don't. It's kind of hard to argue that.
I love that. That was a really good overall executive overview. Last final statements. You almost summed it up faster than I thought you would, but I really love that. And I was actually hoping that you would bring that up because it's one of my favorite taglines. Latent Wealth, change nothing, multiply everything. And I know that we had talked about that before, and I didn't know how much you guys had planned on using that still, but nothing's changed. Everything is amazing. It's awesome. I love that principle. And for me, it was super easy to just pick that up and then learn a little bit about the strategies that you guys use to put to help Americans win. And I love that. And I love that about you guys and what you've created here. So I'm just super grateful for our conversations and for all that we're doing. Stephen, any last thoughts or comments?
I think you summed it up pretty good. Change nothing, multiply everything. All you need to do is just have your money in the places where it needs to be when it needs to be there. And if we can help you do that, then we're all about that, because that's what we've been doing. It's been fantastic. So
cool. Well, I love it. And I love you guys, and I appreciate you for all that you've done. Again, here's an invitation, you guys. If you have interest in learning more, you want to talk to these guys about the strategies, we're inviting you to a fireside chat tomorrow night. It's going to be virtual over Zoom. I posted the link in the description of this post explicitly, as well as in the comment section. You'll see that link. You may have seen a link in there that I accidentally posted. That was just to join me on StreamYard here for a fun little party, but that was a mistake. This is the party we're having right now. There's a second link in the comment section. I'll repost again and make sure you're personally invited to that. But we'd love to have you guys come to our fireside chat tomorrow, where you can ask more questions. It's not necessarily a question of diversification. It's not necessarily a question of what we else should be doing, but it's what we're not doing and what we have availability to use in the form of bill pay and various other strategies. So I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big fan of you guys. Actually counting down the days to when we can go out and go golfing again. I think courses are starting to open up. I was actually driving by Wasatch State Park the other day, and there were some people out on the course. So they're up here in Heber golfing. I don't know about down there in the valley.
Let's do it. Well, we certainly appreciate your time, John. We appreciate the people that are listening and them giving us an ear. We are an educational resource. That's what we are. We educate people on ways to maybe an alternative way to think of some of the things they're trying to accomplish. We look forward to, following up with the people that are interested tomorrow. And between now and then, let's see if we can find a golf ball to hit. All right.
Jason Curtis definitely agrees with that. He said, let's make it on foursome, guys. Only golfers would know what that means. Otherwise, I'm going to momentarily. There we go. But change nothing, multiply everything. Mark Steiner, Leighton Wealth. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. Thanks for joining me on this. I hope we can do this more, because every time I talk to you, every time we get to have these topics and discussions, I learn so much more. And as much as I've known you guys, and as much as we've delved into this conversation, and I've had the luxury of having this like repeated to me multiple times, is I still pick up new things and I still learn something new. And that's just about me and who I am, and learning a little bit about my finances and my, literacy in the in the financial realm. So I'm just super appreciative and grateful for y'all. And again, to our listeners, join us tomorrow night for a private fireside chat where you can get your questions answered, and we can set up some conversations between you and Leighton Wealth, mostly Mark and Stephen. And if anything, let's make sure that leads to us getting out on the course and finding a few golf balls and hitting them as hard as we possibly can. So that's what it's all about. I appreciate you guys, and thanks for taking your time out to happen today. We'll be hanging out tomorrow night. Invitation for everyone else to join us too, but I'm just super grateful, and I can't express that enough for you guys.
Well, thank you again. We appreciate it.
Okay, well, I'm going to end the broadcast. You guys can stay on here for a second. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. I hope this was valuable. I hope that you found some value in it. Please feel free to comment, and I can set you up with conversations to get to know Mark and Stephen a little bit better. And we have ways of helping you understand what you can do with your money to win at life and at business and various large. So I wanted to get into that, and I appreciate you all. And we'll be going again live tomorrow at noon. And just a brief introduction, we're going to be talking with some of our friends over at Enduro Solutions. We'll be talking with Matt Fritchie, who you guys know, and then Levi McPherson, who you also know. And we're going to get into some strategies about how to, do more with the money that you're going to be returning with Leighton Wealth. So there we go. We're going to be having some cool conversations this week. This week has been a financial awareness week, and an uplifting, awesome talk show radio-esque type atmosphere for you to learn about finances. So again, joining me today was Mark and Stephen Steiner with Leighton Wealth. I'm John Kovach with Amplified Minds. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you.